My name is Rabbi Shimon Cowan. You may not know me personally, but you will have known of my father. He was Sir Zelman Cowan. He was a Governor General of Australia. We were immigrants in our background, as were most people in Australia. And we face a time now when we value the role of immigrant communities more than ever. And I will explain what I mean by that. Let me also first add that I am one of a group, I'm perhaps today a spokesman for a group of religious leaders who come from the various Abrahamic faiths. I'm here speaking on behalf also of Bishop Peter Elliott, a senior and respected Catholic bishop in our community. I'm speaking here also on behalf of Imam Riyad Galil, a most respected imam in our community representing the Islamic community. These Abrahamic religions, for the most part, constitute the affiliations, the religious affiliations of Australians today. We are profoundly disturbed as representatives of these major world religions which make up our society at where our society is going. And it's very important to us to appreciate the input which immigrant communities, particularly recent immigrant communities, can make to the political process. Why is this so? Well, the answer is that Western societies, so-called advanced Western societies like Australia, like Western Europe, like the United States, have their fine features. They have provided much for their citizenry. But we are suffering the result of an extreme secularization. What that means is that the value of religion and the traditional values which come with religion have been deeply eroded by the process of modernization and secularization. And therefore, when communities arrive from Africa, from the Middle East, from other parts of the world, which have traditions which are stronger, in which societies secularization and modernization has progressed less, we have chance of making contact through them with the basic values which our society, unfortunately in some areas, has lost. We need, in this election, to make the most of our recent immigrant communities who have in their families and in their backgrounds the strong traditional values which our society to some degree stands in risk of losing. We need them to bolster our traditional values. One of the most important values that a society can have is the protection of life. It's this is the most fundamental rationale for social organization, government, and so on. If we do not protect life, we do not have a society. All of the floodgates of barbarism are before us. Now, this issue, you might think, what does it have to do with this society? We're a law-abiding society. But there are, unfortunately, in our society, areas where we show a disregard for life, which is unworthy of a society which has reached the degree of advancement that our society has. And I'm referring here specifically to a law which was passed in the Victorian Parliament in 2008 and has not been amended since, which is one of the most radical abortion laws in the world. What it says is that a child, a baby, up to the age of 24 weeks can be aborted without any questions at all being asked. And not only does it say that, it forces a doctor to be a party to such an abortion, even when that doctor, him or herself, is personally revolted by the lack of any good grounds for it whatsoever. This attitude of disregard for life and the notion that life can be made in principle disposable by forcing doctors to comply with it under all and any circumstances is something which corrodes the basic character of our society. It is something which does not really have a like in other parts of the world. Unfortunately, our state is an exemplar of a deep disregard for life and it's something which must be amended as a result of this election. Another critical issue in this election has to do with the education of children and the nature of our family. The family has always been the union of a man and a woman. This is the way families have reproduced themselves, the way the family has understood itself for thousands of years. And the Abrahamic religions know this very well. These are principles which we have from Mount Sinai. These are amongst the 10 Commandments. Now, the issue which faces us in this election in regard to the family is that we are being presented with a program in schools. This is already running in certain schools, and Labor says it will make it compulsory in all state schools. And this is a program which is to teach children that homosexuality is an acceptable alternative. Now, let's not make any mistake about this. We don't want to bully anybody. We love and we respect all individuals. But the idea that schools should be places where young children whose personalities and identities have not yet been fully developed should be exposed to an idea that homosexuality, that the non-traditional family is as an acceptable norm, is an acceptable alternative to anything else, this flies in the face of our shared values. In this election, we face a Labor Party which says that in every state school in Victoria, young children will be exposed to the norm of homosexual lifestyles. The Liberal Party does not make this compulsory in all schools, but it is funding it in certain ones. Small parties, the moral parties, want this to be removed. If the purpose is to stop the bullying of children, there are a multitude of programs to stop children being bullied for whatever reason. But there is no reason at all to bring into the schools, to bring into the formation of the character of young children across the state, the idea that the non-traditional marriage, that homosexual behaviour is as valid, is as normative as the traditional family based on the union of man and woman. So we have here an attempt to actually alter the identity of the human being by a program promoting homosexuality in schools, and this is something which could have the most serious social consequences and harm for children in their own personal development. This is a matter for concern in this election. There's another issue also which relates to education in this coming election. And this is the way in which religious schools will be allowed to function. Now, we know that there are many people in this society who make the financial sacrifice to send their children to faith-based schools, Christian, Jewish, Islamic, and others. Why do they send their children to these schools? Because they want their children to be educated in their faith, to get a grounding in the belief and values of their faith. What the Labor Party is proposing to do is to remove the ability of religious schools to select teachers and staff and other personnel who reflect the values, beliefs and lifestyles of the institution. They are going to make religious schools, if they are elected, they are going to make religious schools explain to a secular tribunal why a mathematics teacher employed in a Christian, Muslim or Jewish school should be requested to conform with the values, or at least not to contradict the values of the school. What the Labor Party does not understand is the way in which a religious school operates. Religious schools know that children do not only learn what they're told, but they learn what they see. They learn what is modelled to them. If they are forced by a Labor government to take a mathematics teacher who, let us say, is a strident atheist, or who exhibits a sexual lifestyle which contradicts the values of the school, that school is going to be asked to explain how that characteristic affects the maths teacher's ability to teach mathematics. But that's not the point. The point is that a religious school wants teachers, wants staff, wants personnel, whether they are administrative or they simply groundsmen, or whether they are teachers, even teachers of non-religious studies, to model, to be consistent with the values of the school, because that is the way children learn. They learn from what they see and what they hear, not just in the context of a religious instruction class. This move by the Labour Party, and I don't see this as a partisan, I think this is a matter which presumably deeply unsettles many members of the Labour Party themselves. This is a move to cut at the foundations of faith. It is a move which threatens to disarm and disable religious schools in the basic transmission of faith. Because if we do not have faith, we do not have an Abrahamic ethic. We do not have a Judeo-Christian or a Judeo-Christian Islamic ethic which teaches our values. If the schools are crippled by this legislation, then we are hitting not just at specific values in our shared tradition, but at the very root and source of it. And as a matter of fact, we're striking at the first of the 10 commandments, which was the commandment to believe in God, and that commandment, which of course it is the function of faith schools to impart. This must not be allowed to occur. As a spokesman for a number of faith leaders from the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, I must say that I and my colleagues are very reluctant to tell voters or to suggest to voters how to vote. Religion was always wanted to be bipartisan. It's always wanted to be impartial. And amongst the reasons for this are that there are good people in all parties, and parties do have good policy points, and we understand they represent the variety of temperaments and outlooks of people. However, there do arrive certain crucial moments in our society's history when we must stand up and say, not that you should become a member of this party or that party, but that certain parties happen to be standing for important principles and other parties have failed in those principles. And for that reason, we must rise to the challenge and to the hour and say to you, please support those parties which support the principles which we've spoken to you about. Now, in the lower house, we know that small parties have got virtually no chance of getting seats, and this is because of the electoral system. And therefore I say to you, not as a Liberal and not as a Labour Party supporter, that in this particular election, the Labour Party, unfortunately, is putting forward policies which seriously threaten religious freedom, which seriously threaten the education of children, both in regard to their ability to imbibe faith and in their ability to accept our traditional norm of the union of man and woman. And we also find that both of these parties, unfortunately, have not performed very well in other areas, in the area of abortion. We sincerely hope that as a result of this, the major parties will change their mind on this. However, in the lower party, the less offensive party in regard to our shared values is the Liberal Party, and therefore, in this occasion, we say, as non-partisans, as an exception to the rule, you should vote Liberal. With regard to the upper house, which has a different voting system, which enables small parties to have the chance of getting some representation, we say to you something more than this. We ask you to vote for one of several small parties which we know are true to the values of our shared traditions. These parties are Family First, the Democratic Labour Party, and the Australian Christians. There may be others as well. You will check that for yourselves. Now, of course, the different smaller parties have got better chances in certain areas than in others. In particular, if you live in the western suburbs of Melbourne, if you live in Braybrook, Werribee, Sunshine, Flemington, Ascot Vale, then voting for the DLP is the most pragmatic and useful thing you can do, because there the DLP has a particularly good chance. If, on the other hand, you live in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, Coburg, Carlton, North Melbourne, Carlton, North Melbourne, then the best bet, the most likely of the small parties to get in is Family First. The Australian Christians are a strong party in eastern metropolitan suburbs. But wherever you are, also in the southern metropolitan or in southeast, in the southeastern zone, you should always be seeking to vote for one of these small parties, the Australian Christians, the DLP, Democratic Labour Party, or Family First, or other small parties which you know to share our values. This way, we will hopefully have a party in power in the lower house which is more sympathetic to our shared values. And in the upper house, we will have a significant block of parties which are uncompromised and clear in their commitment to these shared values, to the protection of life, to the protection of the traditional family unit, to the protection of religious freedom. And these small parties in the upper house, in the Legislative Council, could have a crucial role in compelling a government to follow the conscience of mankind, of humankind. And you all know how the ballot papers are set up. In the lower house, you follow on a small ballot slip the order which the major parties have set out, if you wish. And in the upper house, in the Legislative Council, it's sufficient just to put one in the box, which is the box of the party of your choice. That's all you have to do. That is in the vote for the upper house, the Legislative Council. And so we urge you to follow this advice, to support the Liberal Party in the lower house, and to support one of the moral, uncompromised moral parties in the upper house, either Family First, the Democratic Labour Party, or the Australian Christians. And we hope that through this, we will never again have to stand up as religious leaders and tell you or ask you to vote for a political party, for the simple reason that all political parties will know that there are certain non-negotiable moral positions which we take from our background, which constitute our history and our society. May God bless you all.